Power is never granted politely. It never arrives with an invitation, a handshake, or a formal ceremony. It is not something bestowed by benevolent rulers, democratic institutions, or social contracts written by committees of the comfortable. Power is always taken, seized, claimed without permission, without apology, without waiting for approval from those who would prefer you remain powerless. This is the first and most crucial truth that separates those who shape reality from those who are shaped by it. Tonight, we descend into the philosophical depths to explore why power must be taken, how it is taken, and what prevents most people from ever taking it at all. Through the minds of Niccolo Machiavelli, Carl Jung, and Friedrich Nietzsche, we will uncover the dark mechanics of power acquisition and the psychological transformations required to wield it authentically. The comfortable lie that civilization tells itself is that power can be earned through merit, granted through fairness, or achieved through playing by established rules. This lie serves those who already possess power by convincing potential challengers to wait patiently in line, to follow proper procedures, to ask nicely for what they want. But power recognizes no such courtesies. It responds only to force, to will, to the audacity of those who refuse to accept their assigned limitations. Machiavelli understood this with crystalline clarity. He observed that those who wait for power to be handed to them remain forever weak, forever dependent on the goodwill of others, forever vulnerable to the whims of those who were bold enough to seize what they would not. The prince, the leader, the victor, none of them found power by asking nicely. They demanded it. They took risks others feared. They seized opportunity when it presented itself, and they held on to what they claimed through strength, cunning, and relentless determination. Power is fundamentally about agency, the capacity to influence outcomes, to shape events according to one's will, to impose order on chaos according to one's vision, rather than submitting to the visions of others. It is a dynamic force that exists only when asserted, only when exercised, only when demonstrated through action, rather than proclaimed through words. Passivity is the enemy of power. Hesitation is its death. Waiting for permission is its burial. Carl Jung revealed that before external power can be authentically claimed, internal power must be wrestled from the shadows of the unconscious mind. The repressed, disowned parts of ourselves, the anger we're taught to suppress, the ambition we're told to hide, the desire for dominance we're trained to shame, these shadow elements often contain the keys to latent strength that society desperately wants to keep locked away. To truly claim external power, one must first dare to confront and integrate what civilization teaches us to reject about our own nature. The person unwilling to enter this internal struggle, unwilling to face their own capacity for ruthlessness, manipulation, and domination, confines themselves to a diminished life of dependency and limitation. They remain psychologically fragmented, always fighting against aspects of themselves that could be their greatest sources of strength. Only by ruthlessly owning one's darkness, by integrating the shadow rather than projecting it onto others, can external power be authentically claimed and wielded without self-sabotage. Friedrich Nietzsche declared that the will to power is the fundamental driving force of all life, the basic instinct that underlies every human action, even those that appear altruistic or self-sacrificing. Become who you are, he commanded, recognizing that this transformation requires active self-assertion, continual self-overcoming, and an absolute refusal to tolerate diminution by others or by circumstance. There is no polite waiting in Nietzsche's philosophy, no respectful deference to established authority, no patient submission to the pace that others would prefer you maintain. The Übermensch, Nietzsche's vision of human potential actualized, claims power as a birthright to be forged through struggle, not inherited through entitlement or bestowed through social promotion. This power is not granted from above, but seized from within, not given by others but taken from the reservoir of unrealized potential that exists in every human being who dares to actualize it. Every moment you wait for permission, you cede ground to others who act decisively while you deliberate. Every second you spend asking for approval, someone else is taking what you were too hesitant to claim. Every instance you defer to authority that you have not chosen to recognize, you strengthen the power of those who never asked for your permission to exercise their will over you. Power favors the bold, the decisive, those who impose their agenda on reality without hesitation or apology. This is not mere aggression or crude domination, though it can manifest as such in primitive minds. True power is far more sophisticated, far more strategic, far more sustainable than simple force. It is the ability to create conditions where others freely choose to align with your vision, because you have made that alignment serve their interests better than any alternative they can imagine. It is the capacity to shape the field of possibilities so that what you want appears to be what everyone else wants as well. Machiavelli's lessons in strategy and pragmatism expose the fatal weakness of idealists who hope for fairness or justice to deliver power into their hands. These noble souls believe that good intentions, moral superiority, and righteous causes automatically translate into effective influence. They are consistently defeated by those who understand that power operates according to its own laws, which have nothing to do with deserving and everything to do with taking. Realpolitik demands clarity about what you actually want versus what you think you should want. Ruthlessness in pursuing your objectives without being derailed by sentiment or social pressure, and the readiness to act when the moment arises, rather than waiting for perfect conditions that never come. The individual who adheres to principle over popularity, who embraces strategic detachment over emotional entanglement, who chooses effectiveness over appearance, becomes a power taker insistent on outcomes that serve their interests rather than outcomes that make others comfortable. They understand that influence requires calculated risk, the willingness to stake something valuable on uncertain outcomes. They know that leadership demands difficult decisions that someone must make regardless of whether those decisions are popular or pleasant. They recognize that authority involves the exercise of consequence, the ability and willingness to reward alignment and punish opposition in ways that shape future behavior. Those who wait for power fade into irrelevance, becoming footnotes in histories written by those who dared to seize what they would not. To grasp power is to claim responsibility for one's impact on the world, to stop being a passive recipient of others' decisions and become an active creator of conditions that serve your vision. You must discard entitlement, the belief that you deserve power simply because you exist or because you follow rules. You must reject passivity, the habit of waiting for others to initiate while you respond. You must dare to seize what you need rather than hoping it will be provided. Power taken with courage plants the seeds of sovereignty, genuine independence from the approval, support, or permission of others. It establishes you as a force to be reckoned with rather than a factor to be ignored. It creates the foundation upon which further power can be built, because power attracts power, just as weakness attracts exploitation. Shadow integration, strategic ruthlessness, and relentless discipline form the tripod upon which genuine power stands. Without shadow integration, you remain vulnerable to self-sabotage and internal conflict that prevents consistent action. Without strategic ruthlessness, you remain sentimental and easily manipulated by those who understand your emotional triggers. Without relentless discipline, you remain inconsistent and unreliable, unable to sustain the effort required to build and maintain real influence. Power is an act of will expressed through deeds, not words. It is demonstrated through results, not proclaimed through statements. It is proven through consistency, not promised through intentions. Anyone can talk about what they want to achieve, what they plan to do, what they deserve to have. Few possess the strength to take consistent action toward their objectives regardless of obstacles, opposition, or temporary setbacks. The world does not owe you power. You are not entitled to influence simply because you exist, because you have good intentions, or because you follow established procedures. The universe is under no obligation to arrange itself according to your preferences or to provide you with opportunities that require no risk or effort on your part. You must take what you need with resolve, with strategy, with the understanding that power respects only power and yields only to superior force. But this force need not be crude or destructive. The highest forms of power are creative rather than merely dominant, constructive rather than simply controlling. They build rather than merely tear down. They inspire rather than merely intimidate. They create value rather than simply redistributing existing resources. The most sustainable power is power that serves not only your interests, but the interests of those who align with you, creating positive sum games where your victory enables the victory of others. Yet even this constructive power must be taken, not given. Even when your intentions are benevolent, even when your vision serves the greater good, even when your leadership would benefit everyone involved, you must still seize the initiative rather than waiting for others to recognize your value and invite your participation. Good intentions without effective action remain impotent dreams. Noble visions without the power to implement them remain useless fantasies. Power seized without permission is power that commands respect because it demonstrates capability rather than merely claiming it. It is power that ensures survival in competitive environments where the passive are eliminated and the hesitant are left behind. It is power that creates destiny rather than accepting the destiny that others would assign to you. When you take power, you take responsibility for shaping outcomes rather than merely responding to them. This requires a fundamental shift in identity from victim to creator, from reactor to initiator, from follower to leader. The victim mindset waits for rescue, for justice, for someone else to fix what is wrong. The creator mindset identifies what needs to be changed and begins changing it, regardless of whether anyone else agrees or assists. The reactor mindset responds to events as they occur. The initiator mindset shapes events according to a chosen direction. The follower mindset looks for someone else to provide direction and takes comfort in the security of not being responsible for difficult decisions. The leader mindset accepts the burden of decision-making in exchange for the freedom to influence outcomes according to their vision. Each of these shifts requires the willingness to accept greater responsibility, greater risk, and greater isolation in exchange for greater influence, greater freedom, and greater self-determination. Jung understood that this transformation cannot occur without confronting the shadow, those aspects of ourselves that we have been taught to repress or deny. Society trains us to be ashamed of our desire for power, to hide our ambition, to suppress our competitive instincts, to feel guilty about wanting to dominate our environment and influence others according to our will. This conditioning serves those who already possess power by ensuring that potential challengers remain internally conflicted about claiming it. The shadow contains not only our capacity for destruction, but our capacity for creation, not only our potential for selfishness, but our potential for leadership, not only our ability to harm, but our ability to heal through strength rather than through weakness. When we project our shadow onto others, seeing them as power-hungry, manipulative, or controlling, while maintaining the fiction that we are pure and selfless, we disown the very capacities we need to become effective in the world. Shadow integration requires acknowledging that you do want power, that you do want to influence others, that you do want your vision to prevail over competing visions. It means owning your ambition rather than disguising it as service, your competitive drive rather than pretending you don't care about winning, your desire for control rather than claiming you only want to help. This acknowledgement is not permission for destructive behavior. It is the foundation for constructive power that serves chosen purposes rather than unconscious compulsions. The person who refuses to own their shadow remains vulnerable to it. Their repressed desire for power emerges in passive-aggressive behavior, manipulation disguised as helpfulness, or sudden explosions of dominance that undermine their relationships and their goals. They cannot wield power effectively because they cannot acknowledge that they want to wield it, cannot develop their capabilities because they cannot admit they want to be superior, cannot lead others because they cannot accept responsibility for exercising influence over other people's lives. Only when you fully own your desire for power can you begin to develop it intelligently, to exercise it responsibly, to use it in service of chosen values rather than unconscious compulsions. This ownership allows you to be strategic rather than reactive, calculated rather than impulsive, effective rather than merely aggressive. It enables you to build sustainable influence rather than temporary dominance, to create lasting value rather than momentary advantage. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power goes beyond mere dominance over others to include dominance over oneself. The ability to overcome your own limitations, transcend your current capabilities, and become something greater than what you were before. This self-overcoming is the foundation of all other forms of power because it establishes your independence from external validation, external support, and external permission. When you can command yourself, you become capable of commanding others. When you can overcome your own resistance, you become capable of overcoming external resistance. The will to power manifests as the drive to expand your capabilities, to increase your influence, to create rather than merely consume, to build rather than merely inherit, to generate value rather than simply redistributing existing value. It is the force that drives artists to create masterpieces, entrepreneurs to build businesses, leaders to inspire movements, and innovators to solve problems that others accept as inevitable. This force cannot be satisfied by comfort, security, or social approval. It demands expression through achievement that exceeds previous limitations. Yet most people suppress this force because they fear its implications, fear the responsibility that comes with power, fear the isolation that comes with leadership, fear the criticism that comes with standing out from the crowd. They choose the safety of mediocrity over the risk of excellence, the comfort of following over the burden of leading, the security of blending in over the exposure of standing out. This choice keeps them forever dependent on others for direction, validation, and permission to act according to their own judgment. The Übermensch rejects this comfortable slavery and embraces the difficult freedom of self-determination. They refuse to accept limitations imposed by others when those limitations do not serve their chosen purposes. They decline to seek permission for actions that they have the capability to perform and the judgment to guide. They will not wait for consensus when they have the strength to act independently and the wisdom to accept responsibility for the consequences of their actions. This path requires what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate, including the difficult fate of being responsible for your own life and its outcomes. Most people prefer to blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck for their failures while attributing their successes to their own efforts. The Übermensch accepts responsibility for both success and failure, recognizing that this acceptance is the price of genuine power. When you stop making excuses, you start making progress. When you stop blaming others, you start changing outcomes. The practical implications of understanding that power must be taken rather than given are profound and far-reaching. In every area of life, career, relationships, finances, health, personal development, you must identify what you want and begin taking action toward it rather than waiting for others to provide it, permit it, or enable it. This does not mean acting recklessly or ignoring legitimate constraints, but it does mean recognizing that most constraints are self-imposed and most limitations are chosen rather than inevitable. In your career, taking power means identifying opportunities and seizing them rather than waiting to be chosen, promoted, or recognized. It means developing valuable skills that increase your leverage, building relationships that expand your influence, and creating results that demonstrate your capability rather than simply performing assigned tasks adequately. It means positioning yourself as someone who creates value rather than someone who merely follows instructions. In relationships, taking power means establishing boundaries that serve your well-being rather than accepting treatment that undermines it. It means communicating your needs clearly and directly rather than hoping others will intuit them. It means choosing companions who align with your values and support your growth rather than settling for whoever happens to be available or convenient. In finances, taking power means developing multiple income streams rather than depending entirely on employment, investing in assets that work for you rather than only trading time for money, and building wealth that provides options rather than simply covering expenses. It means taking responsibility for your financial education and your investment decisions, rather than delegating these crucial areas to others who may not share your interests or priorities. In health, taking power means taking responsibility for your physical condition through consistent exercise, proper nutrition, adequate rest, and stress management, rather than hoping medical professionals will fix problems that lifestyle choices create. It means investing in prevention rather than waiting for treatment, building strength rather than merely avoiding weakness. In personal development, taking power means committing to continuous learning, skill development, and self-improvement, rather than assuming that your current capabilities are sufficient for your future goals. It means seeking out challenges that force growth, rather than staying within comfortable limitations, pursuing mastery rather than settling for competence. Each of these areas requires the fundamental recognition that you must take initiative rather than waiting for initiative to be taken on your behalf. You must identify what you want, develop plans for achieving it, and begin implementing those plans, regardless of whether others approve, assist, or even understand your objectives. This is the essence of taking power, accepting responsibility for creating the conditions you prefer, rather than merely adapting to the conditions you inherit. But taking power also requires understanding its responsibilities and its costs. Power is not merely the ability to get what you want, it is the obligation to deal with the consequences of getting it. When you take power, you take accountability for the results of exercising it. You cannot claim credit for successes while avoiding responsibility for failures. You cannot enjoy the benefits of influence while rejecting the burdens of leadership. True power is not the ability to avoid consequences, but the strength to handle them wisely. It is not the capacity to escape responsibility, but the willingness to embrace it completely. It is not the freedom to act without constraint, but the discipline to act according to principles that serve long-term objectives rather than short-term impulses. The person who understands power knows that it must be earned continuously through competent performance, not claimed once through a single impressive action. This understanding separates authentic power from mere dominance, sustainable influence from temporary control, genuine leadership from simple intimidation. Dominance can be imposed through force, but it cannot be maintained without the consent of the dominated. Control can be established through coercion, but it creates resistance that ultimately undermines its effectiveness. Intimidation can produce compliance, but it cannot generate the enthusiasm and creativity that voluntary cooperation provides. Authentic power creates conditions where others choose to align with your vision, because that alignment serves their interests better than any available alternative. Sustainable influence builds value for all participants, rather than merely extracting value for the power holder. Genuine leadership inspires others to become more capable, rather than keeping them dependent and weak. Yet even this benevolent power must be taken rather than given, because others cannot give you the internal strength, strategic thinking, and disciplined action required to wield it effectively. They can support your efforts, they can follow your leadership, they can benefit from your success, but they cannot provide the core capabilities that power requires. You must develop those capabilities yourself through practice, study, and the willingness to accept the risks and responsibilities that power entails. The process of taking power begins with the recognition that you already possess more power than you exercise, more influence than you claim, more capability than you demonstrate. Most people operate far below their potential, not because they lack the capacity for greater achievement, but because they lack the permission from themselves to pursue it fully. They hold themselves back through fear, doubt, social conditioning, and the comfortable fiction that someone else is responsible for creating the conditions they prefer. Taking power means withdrawing this permission from others and granting it to yourself. It means recognizing that you do not need anyone else's approval to pursue your objectives, anyone else's support to begin taking action, anyone else's permission to start becoming who you want to become. This recognition is simultaneously liberating and terrifying because it eliminates the excuses that make failure comfortable and the justifications that make inaction feel reasonable. When you truly understand that power must be taken, you stop waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, the ideal circumstances, or the complete elimination of risk. You recognize that these conditions never arrive, and that waiting for them is simply a sophisticated form of procrastination. You begin taking action with incomplete information, making progress despite uncertainty, building momentum through consistent effort rather than waiting for inspiration or motivation. This shift from waiting to taking, from hoping to acting, from following to leading, transforms every area of your life because it transforms your fundamental relationship with reality. Instead of seeing yourself as subject to forces beyond your control, you begin to see yourself as one of those forces. Instead of accepting circumstances as given, you begin creating circumstances according to your preferences. Instead of adapting to limitations, you begin transcending them through strategic effort and disciplined persistence. The ultimate recognition is that power is not something external that you acquire, but something internal that you express. It is not something others can give you or take away from you, but something that flows from your willingness to accept responsibility, take initiative, and persist through obstacles that stop others. The moment you stop asking for permission and start taking action, you begin to claim the power that was always yours to take. This is the dark philosophy of power. No waiting, no pleading, no delay, no justification, no apology. There is only the recognition of what you want, the decision to pursue it, and the disciplined action required to make it reality. Power exists in the space between intention and action, between decision and implementation, between vision and manifestation. That space is where your life is either created consciously or allowed to unfold randomly. Your choice is simple. You can continue to wait for others to grant you permission to live the life you want, or you can begin taking the actions that create that life, regardless of whether anyone else approves or assists. You can keep hoping that circumstances will change in your favor, or you can start changing circumstances to serve your objectives. You can remain comfortable in the familiar limitations that others have accepted, or you can begin transcending those limitations through the exercise of capabilities you have never fully tested. The world does not need your permission to operate according to its own laws. Reality does not require your approval to function according to its own principles. Other people do not seek your consent before pursuing their own objectives. Why should you seek their permission to pursue yours? Why should you wait for approval that may never come? Why should you accept limitations that serve others' interests better than your own? Power is never given, because those who possess it understand that giving it away diminishes their own influence. They will share the benefits of power when doing so serves their interests, but they will not transfer the power itself to those who have not demonstrated the strength to take it and the wisdom to wield it effectively. If you want power, you must demonstrate that you deserve it by taking it, not by asking for it. This demonstration begins with small acts of self-determination, modest exercises of initiative, limited but consistent assertions of your will against the resistance of inertia, doubt, and social pressure. Each successful assertion builds the strength for greater assertions. Each victory over internal resistance prepares you for victories over external obstacles. Each expansion of your capabilities creates the foundation for further expansion. The path of power is not traveled once but continuously, not achieved finally but maintained constantly, not granted permanently but renewed through consistent performance. Power taken today must be exercised wisely, or it will be lost tomorrow. Influence built through years of effort can be dissipated through moments of poor judgment. Authority earned through competent leadership can be undermined by inconsistent behavior. Yet this continuous challenge is not a burden, but an opportunity, not a problem, but the very essence of what makes power worthwhile. The person who takes power accepts the responsibility of proving their worthiness of it through results rather than through rhetoric, through performance rather than through promises, through the creation of value rather than through the consumption of existing resources. Be the one who takes, because no one else will give it to you. Be the one who acts while others deliberate. Be the one who risks while others seek safety. Be the one who creates while others consume. Be the one who leads while others follow. Be the one who takes responsibility while others make excuses. Your time is now, not because the conditions are perfect, but because conditions will never be perfect, and waiting for perfection is simply another form of surrender to the forces you could be controlling. Your opportunity is here, not because you have been chosen, but because choosing is something you do, rather than something that happens to you. Your power is available, not because you deserve it, but because you have the capability to take it and the strength to wield it responsibly. Power is never given, it is always taken. The only question is whether you will take it or whether you will spend your life wishing that someone else would give you permission to live according to your own vision rather than theirs. The choice is yours, but you must make it through action rather than intention, through deed rather than desire, through the courage to take what you need rather than the comfort of hoping it will be provided. There are no victims in the game of power, only players who understand the rules and players who pretend the rules don't exist. There are no innocent bystanders, only those who choose to influence outcomes and those who choose to be influenced by them. There are no neutral positions, only the position of taking power and the position of having power taken from you. Which position will you choose? Which player will you become? Which rules will you follow? The rules that keep you comfortable and dependent, or the rules that make you capable and sovereign? The universe is waiting for your answer, but it will not wait forever. Power flows toward those who take it and away from those who wait for it to be given. Take what is yours. Take it without permission. Take it without apology. Take it now, because now is all you have, and later is what happens to those who choose to wait rather than to act. This is the ultimate truth of power. It belongs to those bold enough to claim it, strong enough to hold it, and wise enough to use it in service of purposes greater than comfort, safety, and social approval. The moment you stop asking for permission is the moment you begin to live as the creator of your own destiny, rather than the victim of circumstances created by others who were not afraid to take the power you were afraid to claim. Your life is waiting for you to seize control of it. The only question is whether you will take that control or continue to delegate it to others who were bold enough to accept the responsibility you chose to avoid. Power is never given. It is taken without permission. Take yours now.